Hey, it's dotNYC number, I think, 11. I don't even remember. No, I lost count. From the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism. We're going to talk about journalism, because that's what we do, and also technology here, and try to figure out the intersection of the two in here at the center of the universe in Times Square, New York, New York. So today we're going to have a few topics. I'm here with my colleague and friend, Carrie Brown. Carrie is the director of the social journalism program we have here at CUNY. We hit intellectual kismet immediately, seeing the world in journalism the same way, and she's doing amazing work with the students trying to rethink journalism, which we'll talk about. Because the context is John Oliver's amazing video on saving journalism and the value of journalism and the value of local newspapers. So we're talking about that. I just got back from, I'm going to do a little place dropping right now, from Aspen. The Aspen Institute had a thumb-sucking event about Wither the Future of Journalism, and this video came out while we were there, so we'll talk about that as well. And then, Skype willing, we're going to have on Raphael Rivero, who is the co-founder with his twin brother of Occupy Democrats. And if you haven't seen Occupy Democrats, they make unbelievable volume of memes on Facebook, obviously partisan toward the Democrats, but they use social media in new ways. And so I wanted to have Carrie and me talk to him. I wrote a piece on Medium about that about a week ago. So let's start with John Oliver. Annie, you want to show the clip to remind folks what it looks like?
Yeah. Ready?
Yep.
Okay.
Hit it.
Have a school. And look, it is clearly smart for newspapers to expand online, but the danger in doing that is the temptation to gravitate toward whatever gets the most clicks, which is why news organisations badly need to have leaders who appreciate that what's popular isn't always what's most important. But that is not always the case. Look at Sam Zell, a billionaire investor and living garden.
So John Oliver, and when we do the next clip, let's see, guys, if we can get it on the screen behind so folks on Mevo can see it as well. John Oliver did a 19-minute video Sunday night, a pay-on to local newspapers, right? And so let's just go through kind of the reaction to it. What was your first reaction to the video? Because it went around my social feed, of course, immediately, because we're all so self-centered.
Right, of course. I mean, it was hilarious. Who doesn't love John Oliver? He's the best. And by all means, anyone that wants to extol the virtues of journalism and how important it is to democracy, I mean, I think that's awesome for us. But, you know, obviously, I think I really wish that just sort of shaming everyone into paying for newspapers was a good strategy. You know, I'd like it if more people did, but, you know, I'm not sure that that's, you know, necessarily the best thing. We've tried it, and it didn't work out quite so well.
Right. So at the end, he comes around and talks about the troubles of the industry. Does a fairly good job of that, but to jump to the end, to spoil it, right? His solution is we're all a bunch of schmucks because we don't pay for journalism, and we should. Right. A very funny line, because he says, in fact, you're watching this segment right now for free on YouTube using the cafe downstairs Wi-Fi. But that's not really the solution. That's not really where we go. So I was at Aspen, and we were trying to think through the future of journalism and why can't we survive and what are we and does anybody trust us anymore and all those kind of big issues. One of the interesting things that came up was a fairly lengthy discussion about whether comedy is journalism.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't it? I've always wanted to teach a course here at CUNY in comedy as journalism.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I have good friends that have actually done a lot of research into, you know, how, beginning with The Daily Show, you know, comedy is an excellent way for people to get information. And in many cases, you know, more, especially younger folks, were being informed by those kinds of sources than, you know, more traditional news. So I think, you know, obviously it's not quite the same as traditional journalism, but in some cases, it really can be a very powerful means for delivering information, for sure.
Yeah, and so Aspen's held under Chatham House rules, so you can't say who said what. But suffice it to say, there was a really good not-for-profit investigative news organization who was there, and Oliver picked up their big story, and they got incredible amounts of reach thanks to Oliver. And that was a debate. Well, was he stealing all their work? They spent, you know, a year on this story, and then Oliver used it. And it kind of misses the point. It misses the point of what our goal is as an industry. If we're in the old business model of volume, if we have to make our money only on ad impressions of people coming to us, then yes, any attention elsewhere, if it doesn't link to us, steals from that business model. But that's not what journalism is about.
Right.
Journalism is about impact. It's about changing the world, improving the world, and John Oliver helped them do that. So it was interesting. They were calling comedians aggregators, and aggregators was a bit of a dirty word. And then somebody else, again, I can't quote who said what, which I hate because I want to give credit for good ideas. But somebody else at Aspen said, no, it's a derivative work. It takes the nut of journalism and then adds to it. And John Oliver himself made that point when he talked about an Oregonian story about lotteries. Was it lotteries, right?
I think so.
I think so. And how they at the Daily Show back in the day, or no, at Oliver's own show, worked with that journalist, understood what that journalist's work was, credited that journalist, and spread the work.
Right.
I think that TV and comedy and social as ways to spread what we do, spread the word of what we do, and get more impact is only an unalloyed good.
Right. I mean, I think you can add value in a lot of different ways to journalism. And, one example, Center for Investigative Reporting, I mean, they've taken some of their big investigations about, pollution in New Jersey and done a comedy show in Jersey City where I live. The comedians are all sort of riffing off the themes from the journalism. I mean, that's another way to get people that are not going to sit down and read your long piece about this as much as we might like them to do that, getting them engaged in the story, getting them informed. So I think these kinds of experiments are great. And, aggregation can be a value add just depending on, how you do it, obviously.
Right.
I mean, there's good and bad ways to do that.
Certainly the case. So then, Oliver, it was an easy cheap shot, you could argue. He had as a victim Trunk, the rebranded Tribune Publishing. And it so happened at this Aspen do, among the attendees there was Michael Farrow, who is the owner of Tribune Company, now known as Trunk, and the guy who gets lampooned as owners do for this stuff. So we arrive Sunday, we have dinner and drinks. Afterwards, we all go off to our rooms. The next morning, everybody wakes up and says, "Did you see Oliver? Did you see Oliver?" And soon is going to come Michael Farrow, who took it as a real mensch and had a sense of humor about it, and was great. And I got to like Farrow. Somebody scolded me when I made fun of a video that Trunk made a while ago, which Oliver in turn made fun of. Somebody from another newspaper company scolded me and said, "Well, at least they're trying things." Yeah, maybe they're trying. Are they trying good things or bad things? I think still matters. The same with Advance and the Oregonian. And in full disclosure, I worked for Advance for 12 years. I still work with the larger company. People have lamented what's happened with these newspapers and these changes, but they're trying to survive. They're trying to figure it out. So the Oregonian and Advance have gone truly digital first. My favorite moment from the Oliver video is him making fun of the phrase digital first.
Yeah.
Remember what he said it sounded like?
I don't remember the exact words, but yeah.
I think it was a sexual reference to teenagers that you put your
right.
finger in the mouth
Yes.
and you got to digital first and it was hot. So I sent that to the guy who named his company Digital First as soon as it happened.
Nice.
So Oliver makes fun of the Oregonian in a way. Well, doesn't so much make fun of them as he laments the shrinkage. But this is a necessity. They've got to figure out how to become digital enterprises. But then he holds his real horror and humor for Trunk. And if we can get on the screens back here, Annie? Can't get on the screen back here. Okay, so just play a second of the Trunk thing, and folks on Mevo can hear it.
It doesn't get much better than that. If you care about media and technology, this is the place to be.
So that's the video that Trunk made, that
Trunk
everyone made
stands
fun
for
of.
Tribune Online Content.
Yes, Trunk. They have chosen to call themselves Trunk, which sounds like the noise an ejaculating elephant makes. Or more appropriately, the sound of a stack of print newspapers being thrown into a dumpster. And if you are wondering how Trunk's business model will be different, get ready to have your...
So there's Trunk. The video that came out, I think, about a month or 2 months ago, talks about all kinds of ridiculous things of having artificial intelligence and aggregating and taking content into a funnel and adding an analysis to it so you can automatically increase value and increase engagement and increase this and increase that and increase the business model. What did you think of the original Trunk video?
Well, I mean, I laughed at it along with most other journalists. I mean, using the word content 3 times in basically one sentence was a little much for me. But, I mean, I think in fairness, as some other people have pointed out as well, I mean, yes, they're experimenting. I do think there are ways we can use, automation and technology to make some processes in news more efficient, to allow us to spend more valuable time on, reporting, et cetera. But, I mean, at the same time, I just don't, especially the part where they're going to, use automation to produce 2,000 videos a day. I don't understand where the user, the audience, the community, whatever word you want to use for that, I don't understand where they are in that, where their needs are and how you're really serving people with that kind of model. Maybe I'm just missing some kind of cool juice that they're going to throw in there and make it all awesome for everyone, but I don't get it.
Well, the problem too is what it means to listen to the public. So Oliver also makes fun of Sam Zell, who was the prior owner of Tribune Publishing, who got much lambasted, and I think for good reason, when he said that we should give readers what they want. And a journalist in the room predictably said, but the readers want puppies.
Right, of course.
And Zell said, well, I hope we make enough money we can do both puppies in Iraq. Okay, so I and then said F you to the journalist who'd asked the question.
Right.
So I get the concern there, but the essence of what you and what I'm lucky I get to do with you in social journalism is to listen to the community.
Right.
Why don't you define social journalism first?
Well, the way we define social journalism, and I'm partly using your definition, of course, is as a service rather than as a product. So we're really focusing on building relationships with people, trying to understand what their needs are and how we can help them solve their own problems and produce impact in their communities. So I think in a lot of ways that gets you out of that classic dichotomy that newsrooms and journalists always find themselves in between that, do we force you to eat your spinach or do we just give you, people in bikinis all day? I mean, I think if you really listen to people, you can find ways to make the stories that we know are important, more interesting and more relevant, specifically to your interests. So I think that's a way out of that, what I think is kind of a false dichotomy, but one that, again, always comes up over and over and over again in these discussions.
It changes the order. I hope what social journalism does is change the order of journalism and what we do when. Because what we do now, and here at journalism schools, we tell students to find a story, know what a story is, pitch a story, go out and report that story, fill in the blanks in that story with quotes, write that story and put it out there, and then we try to get lots of audience to that story.
Yeah.
So it's all very much media-centric, and everything we do in the process and in the measurements, reach, frequency, page views, unique users, is all media-centric. Whereas social journalism, I hope, becomes community-centric. It says we observe and listen to the community first. Carrie every year brings in an anthropologist into class, and it's eye-opening for me the discipline that an anthropologist has to bring back the evidence of what a community does and wants and needs versus what we just presume. So the idea of listening to the audience and doing what the audience wants, you can make fun of Sam Zell's interpretation of that, certainly, and should, but I don't think we listen to the public that we serve nearly well enough.
No.
And a lot of the discussion, so John Oliver, again, gives a paean to newspapers and how wonderful they are, but we also have to admit that we're not trusted.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, studies have shown that trust has been falling for a long, long time, even before social media and the web. And yeah, I mean, a lot of communities out there just feel like the mainstream media has not done a good job representing them. I mean, Black Lives Matter, great example. I mean, it's not like police violence is something that just suddenly started happening 2 years ago, but it wasn't the kind of issue that typically got covered, by a lot of journalists. So, until it became a hashtag and, people found other ways to make their voices heard, I think, there's a lot of other issues like that we could be doing a much better job if we were really listening. And communities,
So I had a journalist call me before I left last week to talk about a book he's trying to work on, and the working title was something about the internet kills truth or after truth or that kind of stuff. And I thought about that afterwards after I got off the phone with him, and it occurred to me that we keep on thinking we own the truth. We're the agents of truth. We're the gatekeepers to truth. And you could certainly argue that in the era of Trump, we had a show here at dotNYC a week ago on trying to cover Trump as a civic emergency. One of the great problems we have in society now is people are believing lies and are believing crap. But to argue that the good old days was when you had to read a newspaper and the newspaper held truth,
Right.
doesn't really hold that. And I wish I'd said to this guy who was writing the book after on the phone that if you think you had truth and trust because you had this product, African American community of let's say young men didn't agree with your truth.
Right.
Didn't trust what you reported, and social media and Black Lives Matter is what enabled that community to find each other and have a voice that they never had and to present a different truth.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting that journalists, I mean, I beat into my students' heads over and over, like verification of facts is the most important thing that you do. That's the biggest piece of your job. But, you know, I mean, at the same time, I mean, scholars for millennia have debated over the nature of truth and how complicated that is, and that it's a much bigger thing as opposed to just, you know, here is the exact set of facts and, you know, here is the wrong side of things. I mean, that's a complicated issue, and journalists can do a lot better if they're really listening and paying attention to how different people see the world, what their perspectives are, the things they need to know.
In the Mevo Facebook Live comments, Ben Verbuehler says that give the readers what they want can work for community journalism and cites Harkin.
Right.
We're both great fans of Harkin. You want to explain Harkin?
Yeah, I mean, Harkin is just a new platform Jennifer Brandel started up that basically allows you to very easily collect questions from your audience and has a nice back end that allows you to sort of manage those submissions. Readers can vote on which comment that they want you to, or which question that they want you to answer, and they allow readers to get involved in the reporting process. Our students in our class experimented with it, and it was really kind of neat to see them do that. And, you know, and in addition to just being something that, you know, sounds good on its face, they're having really pretty good results in terms of, you know, traffic and engagement on the stories that are done, you know, using that process, which I think is where the rubber meets the road for a lot of people. So
yeah, and the key to it is that we stand here and say, okay, we're an asset, we're a service for you. Assign us, tell us what to do.
Right.
Now the fear always is, well, they're all going to have us do puppies or cats or Kardashians. But then, if you really believe that, you have no faith in the public we serve.
Sure.
Kind of why serve them?
Right, and I think we get so attached to these dichotomies in journalism, and it's so frustrating to me. I mean, we had comics, we had sports. Like the idea that people are attracted to things that might be funny or cute, I mean, that's not new, right? But that doesn't mean that, oh, okay, if they want that, then it's impossible to get them to, you know, care about politics or, you know, the local community. I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous. There is space for both things, but you don't have to be either or all the time.
Yeah, and the thing that I think that hit us both about the Oliver video, as much as we both liked it and both loved that he did it and laughed hysterically at it, is that it falls into the same trap that we fall into in our business of trying to think that by preserving the past, we've done the right thing.
Right.
That the presumptions of the past are what we should do. That we, you know, the first presumption we've just talked about is the presumption that we have news judgment. We know what's important. We'll tell you.
Right.
The next judgment, I want to play this off on you because I've written a post, but I haven't had the courage to put it up yet, in which the headline is "Journalists are not storytellers." I think I'll be lined up against the wall and shot in a journalism school, right? Because our that's part of the credo of what we do is that we teach people how to tell stories. So the storytelling is our finest art, is our greatest skill. But I think storytelling is a trap. I think it's a trap in the sense that we control the narrative. It's a trap in thinking that anything can be reduced to a narrative. It's a trap in thinking that everything has to be one and that we miss all these other amazing tools that exist out there in the world to help inform communities. And it makes us think that we just produce a product called content and stories. Yeah. I saw that at Aspen, where you have the industry trying to get together, how do we preserve what we've been? And I saw it, I think, in Oliver as well. It says we have to write these stories. Well, should I be shot?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I completely agree that I think we're about more than storytelling. And I think it's really intriguing to think about how that can be a trap into which, we shove everything into, that specific hole. But I mean, I do think storytelling is one of the things that journalists do and are good at. And I mean, and stories are just really very crucial to human psychology and human community and sort of the way that we share information with each other, and has been even since, we could only communicate orally, before the written word. So, I mean, I wouldn't sort of throw out storytelling completely, but I think you're right that sometimes that's not how people want to get a particular piece of information. And by just clinging to only that is the only way you can do journalism is really, really limiting, especially right now.
And the other trap of the past is obviously the business model of the past.
Right,
Again,
yeah.
mass media business model. I've come to realize what the internet killed was the mass, the whole idea of the mass, and the mass media business model. And that's what John Oliver, in essence, is trying to preserve. You used to pay for content, pay for
Right.
content.
Yeah.
And that's not the future of the business of journalism.
Right. Well, and you can't make people pay, no matter how much you want them to. Just sheer force of desire is not enough to change newsrooms. And I think for a long time, that's what we tried to do. But, more and more journalists are realizing that, we have to make something people want to pay for, either with their attention or with their wallet. But, we can't just force it on them.
And the other fundamental truth is that the value of journalism is information, and information, once it's known, is a commodity.
Yeah.
And I've argued in the past that no information doesn't want to be free, but journalists want to free information. So what we do is free it up. We want it to be spread. And go back to the example of John Oliver taking an investigative story and promoting it. In the one hand, the old business model didn't support that. They didn't get the traffic back to their site for ads. But on the other hand, the fundamental goal of improving society and changing society was better met by sharing.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're in this sharing world, which I think is a cue to, do we have Raphael on Skype?
We have to get him back on.
Oh, okay, so go ahead and get him on and just yell at me when we have him. Because this idea of sharing things, I sat with a columnist from, I guess I'm not supposed to say who was there. So a columnist from a major newspaper yesterday who's, I didn't remember this, credited me with showing him Twitter in the first place. Nice. And then came and said, what's new, what's next? And I come to see the need to not just draw people back to his important columns, where he does in fact try to change the world, but to try to go to where the audience is, to go where the people are. In social journalism, people think all the time that it's about social media purely, that they assume that it's, you get to use Twitter and Facebook well. How do those skills, though, fit into the larger picture of what you teach?
I mean, they are really important, even though it's, about more than just social media. I mean, that's a key way that people are getting news today. It's a key way that people are engaging with news today. It's an excellent reporting tool. So, I mean, we spend a lot of time just talking about, how can you use all these different social platforms? How can you create the kind of content that people want to share and that people want to engage with in some way? I mean, it is a really critical piece of journalism today.
There's been a lot of talk lately about platform-specific content creation, right? So the Washington Post is hiring 2 full-time Facebook Live producers, right, to do nothing but that. I know places that are hiring Snapchat producers. This is my new Samsung 360 camera here. And we know, obviously, institutions are being made. I saw Riot, bought by Huffington Post out at Aspen. There are journalists who are doing nothing but shooting 360. How much does the journalist need to be able to work across all platforms, and how much do they need to specialize in a platform?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I mean, today, I think there's a relatively small number of news organizations that have the resources to hire for those very specific platforms, but there definitely are some of them. And there are some unique skill sets involved with, producing something great on Snapchat. But, at the same time, I think you also have to know your audience and, how that audience consumes information. And that may be a little bit more important even than, just Snapchat writ large. But I don't know. I think we're still trying to figure that out. I don't know if we have all the answers there.
So It's a perfect segue into my new friend, Raphael Rivero, who with his twin brother, Omar, founded Occupy Democrats. How are you, Raphael?
I'm well. How are you?
Great. Thanks for coming in. Coming in on
Sure.
Skype. So I've been fascinated with Occupy Democrats because, and full disclosure here too is, I'm with her. I'm a Hillary backer.
So am I.
So just see, everything's on the table. And Occupy Democrats came across my Facebook feed again and again and again and again, and I shared it again and again and again because it spoke for me. It said, I want to, yeah, what he says. That's right. And so I was really struck by what they've created, and I want to get the story behind it. And the reason, just to set you up, the reason I wanted to get the story behind it, the reason I think it's relevant for us today, is because it treats the entire notion of of content differently. And it says rather than content being a destination we have to force people to go to, and ideally we think force them to pay for it too, instead of going to where the people are, if you want to have the impact, then you have to make things that are social tokens. I've talked about this before on VidCon. I learned that for young people, my daughter, YouTube videos are social tokens. When she passes them around, she says, this speaks for me. So Occupy Democrats does that, and it comes across with these amazing memes that are just simply blocks of pixels, a GIF with text, information, a viewpoint, and a call to action that people then in turn share. And to me, that's a lesson for journalists, that we have to understand how to bring the value of what we do to people and in a way that fits into their conversations. Okay, so that's why I was so fascinated with Occupy Democrats, and I got on the phone with Raphael and spent probably an hour and a half learning about it. So Raphael, why don't you tell us first about, this is my colleague Carrie Brown,
Hey.
Who teaches
Hi,
social
Carrie.
journalism here at CUNY. Tell us about Occupy Democrats, how it started, what you say it is.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Well, Occupy Democrats was initially seen as an alternative to the Tea Party. It was initially just a hobby, just a Facebook page. My twin brother and I had this conversation where we thought Tea Party Republicans they have a whole caucus in Congress, and yet the Occupy movement has chosen to be leaderless outside the system and really hesitant to plug into the existing political system, particularly the Democratic Party. So we thought, with no resources and no institutional backing, and really no concrete links to the actual Occupy movement, we thought, why not just start a Facebook page? At this point, Facebook pages were in their infancy. This was in 2012, I think a month before the 2012 presidential election. And it really just took off. We started using memes in new and innovative ways, we thought, to kind of respond to what people out there were talking about, giving people the fodder to engage in these, in what we call jokingly meme warfare. And slowly but surely, our page just snowballed into what it is today. We have 3.5 million subscribers. We reach, we have over 100 million impressions per week. We activate about 5 million Facebook users a week through likes, comments, and shares. So it's become something of a phenom. We are currently the most active political page on Facebook, surpassing Donald Trump and the Hillary campaign, who are number 2 and number 3 respectively. So what initially started as just a hobby has grown into something much larger.
So talk first about the goal. You said you give people fodder. Fodder for what? What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to serve and feed at Occupy Democrats?
Well, I think much to the dismay of traditional journalists, I think a lot of the discussion, really the debate, has moved on to social media. It's the new turf on which these discussions are won or lost. And so what we do is we give people the ammunition to go out there and engage with conservatives, with other liberals. Obviously, we're unabashedly progressive. So we give people these, not really sound bites, but graphic bites, if you will, to respond to the debates of the day. I'll give you an example. Yesterday's comments by Trump about the Second Amendment. Of course, it caused a media uproar, and we were out there right away with graphics for liberals really to hit back and to take advantage of this opening and hopefully try to sway opinions out there and eventually voting patterns.
So, Carrie, jump in a second with your own questions, but let me also ask you to do us a favor in media and define a good meme. What's your rule set?
Absolutely. Well, I do have a certain number of rules that I've created over the years. My big thing is that it seems obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people actually don't do this. They don't tell the full story within the meme itself. They assume that the viewers know more than they actually do. You kind of have to imagine that the average Facebook user is not that politically savvy, not that politically engaged, and within the four corners of the meme, you have to really tell the whole story in the most succinct way possible. A good meme is also this also sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people don't follow this. It's very readable. It must pop out. The text must really pop out and be visible from 30 feet away. And I think a good meme isn't just a factoid or a fact. It's a fact, and also it carries some emotional weight. So it's something, I always add something that I call the kicker. And it's basically saying, okay, here's a fact, here's what happened, but here's how you should feel about it. Should you feel dismayed? Should you feel outraged? Should you feel annoyed? Should you feel upset? And it's basically, in a sense, a call to action.
Yeah, dude, I think it's just really interesting, and we're trying more and more to prepare students, for a world where this is the kind of thing people want to consume and share. Do you think that journalists that are working in a newsroom that, still has rules coming down from on high about objectivity, I mean, do you think they can still create memes, or is it just too difficult if you're not allowed to sort of have a more opinionated stance on things? Will it still work, or not really?
Honestly, in a sense, I would say no.
Yeah.
And this is what I told Jeff earlier when we spoke. It's very difficult because how do you include the kicker, as I referred to earlier? In some ways, we are a mixture of a journalism outlet and an opinion outfit. It's kind of like how Fox News introduced this concept of opinionated journalism. Mm-hmm. Well, it's really moved on to social media, and I think you can't just tell ABC and CBS, you should start making memes, because I don't think that they would be that effective. In fact, I have seen some outfits, create some of their own memes, and I don't think that they're that effective, and they haven't gone very viral. I've seen Huffington Post, the Daily Beast, Slate, kind of dip their toes into the meme world, and it's not that effective because they are bound by these rules and norms of journalism.
So let me push that a little bit. I guess because I'm going to say what I said, not what somebody else said. I can tell you that I was just at this Aspen Institute thing about journalism. I've now dropped that 20 times, sorry. And so Marty Barron, the editor of the Washington Post, was there, who I have ever more admiration for. Also there for another conference was Nick Kristof of the New York Times. And Nick, I don't remember doing this. Nick says that I exposed him to Twitter at the beginning. And so he said, okay, what's next? And so I'm telling him about you. I'm telling him about the idea of memes and not always trying to be the destination, which is what our business model demands in media. But Nick's trying to change the world. So Nick's not trying to be a network that's balanced. Nick Kristof is trying to change and improve the world, to expose people to stories that they can't others see, to push them on that. And so I was going to send him the piece I wrote about you, and maybe he'll even watch this, because I also want to tell him about the Mevo. So imagine you have Nick Kristof of the New York Times, world-traveling columnist who brings the attention of underserved stories and underserved parts of the world to New York Times readers. He's very savvy about using social media, about using Twitter and Facebook. And so I told him, you ought to be turning some of your points and arguments and calls to action into memes. So imagine you have Nick sitting right here next to us. What would you advise him?
Absolutely. I would tell him, that thesis sentence at the beginning or that conclusion at the end of some of your pieces, turn them into graphics. I do that all the time. I look for op-eds or something that Bernie Sanders said, or I go through the transcripts of Obama's speech at the DNC, for example, and I'll just take that one snippet, that really compelling quote that really grips you, and I'd turn it into a graphic, and you'd be surprised how far it goes. Now, of course, you need a graphics person, you need someone with an eye for design, and I think a lot of the people that are in print journalism many of them are over the hill in terms of their age, and they don't have that.
Hey, watch it.
I mean, but they could easily hire someone, and I think that's what it would require. I mean, they don't have the time or the graphics savviness to kind of put this stuff together, but I think that they would be surprised by how effective something like that could be. And the first time something goes viral, they'll say, hey, I'm really onto something here. You could really raise your profile as a journalist by doing this.
So give the next argument. So if Nick says, okay, I buy the punchline, now he's got to go sell the joke to the editors of the New York Times. What's their benefit? Why should they consider doing this?
To reach a certain segment that they're not currently reaching. Not everyone goes to the NewYorkTimes.com and gets a subscription. Not everyone is signed up to the New York Times page. A lot of people consume these bites who are, like I said earlier, not plugged into the traditional journalist world. And it's a way, I think, to really build your brand. It's really about brand building. Mm-hmm. It's very visual, obviously, a meme, so you want to brand everything the same way. And once people see one of your graphics, two of your graphics, three of your graphics, maybe 20, maybe 40 of your graphics, it starts to really create a brand.
Yeah, I'm always amazed by like how few even Metro Daily newspaper editors don't want to take the chance of just hiring a younger person, and instead of squishing them into this traditional mold, like let them go. Like they're immersed in the culture of the internet. Let them try new things, and you just might drive all this like new audience that not only do you not have now, but you never really had. There's just not a lot of tolerance for that kind of risk taking, I think. But it could be really, really interesting to see, what they would come up with.
Have you had any media companies come to sit at your feet?
We did have some interest from a certain New York-based company that found us. They basically just realized through social media tracking that Occupy Democrats, this previously unknown page, was kind of kicking butt on social media. So they did approach us, and in the end, after meeting my twin brother and I, they offered us kind of like a web TV show. And it just kind of didn't work with what we were doing. We're already pretty busy. But they offered to come in, soundproof one of our bedrooms and our offices, and create like a web show. And looking back on it now, I think it was probably not such a bad idea because of the way that actually video now is taking over a lot of political memeing on Facebook. My brother and I, we are engaged with it now in Occupy Democrats. We have a video person, and we create video memes called what we call memes. And so this show that this network offered us, I think, would have been more successful. So yes, we did have at least one company reach out.
I think media people will find it fascinating that you say, oh, TV star? No, never mind, I'm busy. And even, you have a website, right? There is an Occupy Democrats website, but that's not, that also, making destination, and your brother Omar creates a lot of the articles there, but that's not the heart of what you do. The heart of what you do is social, right?
That's right. We do have the articles, and I think that they fund the other more fun stuff, which for me is the graphics and the video memes, which is what we're really known for.
So you make money only from the website, not from Facebook, yes?
That's right. In fact, we actually pay Facebook sometimes to promote our page.
Oh, right.
So it really only goes in one direction from Facebook. Facebook, what we are for Facebook is a free media content creators. But Facebook, as you know, has been really turning um, the screw on content producers, really making it tougher and tougher to get your content out there. And only the most compelling content really rises to the top. The Facebook algorithms are absolutely ruthless nowadays. And we've been able to succeed really by just by pushing ourselves and really thinking what is the best content that we could create. And so that's worked for us on Facebook. And yes, we do have ads on the website, and that's really our only source of revenue. But that's not the fun stuff, in my opinion. I mean, no one really knows about Occupy Democrats because of our articles. They would mostly recognize us for the graphics.
And the revenue you get off I mean, it says to me a lot about what's wrong with our industry, right? All the value of what you do, all the pressure of what you do is on Facebook, but you can't monetize that. So you have to create a web page. This reminds me of Jersey Shore Hurricane News.
Oh, right.
Has 250,000 followers for 2 counties in New Jersey. He's just great, but no money there. So we help him get a web page. It's just like, let's go back. Next thing you're going to be doing is printing a newspaper, so you can make money from that, right?
Yeah.
That we're not set up for that.
Well, there's a whole.
Go ahead.
Sorry, there's a cottage industry really of liberal and conservative web pages out there, and there's a derisive term for them called churnalism. Basically, it's a whole ecosystem of websites that they take traditional journalism, they give it their own spin, maybe a sexier title, and they put it out there, and it sometimes eats the lunch of the traditional journalism, and it's a big problem. And it's something, I know you guys are going to talk about clickbait on your show, I guess later on your show, and and clickbait is part of it too, and it is a big issue, and it's hard to maintain your journalistic integrity in that context, but it's really the only funding mechanism that a lot of these indie news websites have.
I see.
And a lot of times it's a couple of 20-year-olds in a basement. And the way that we use it really to fund our other stuff is not really the way that many other people do. For many other people, that is their main focus. So it's interesting, the interplay between traditional and this new indie journalism that's going on out there.
So you're not a journalist, you're an advocate. Would that be a fair statement or not?
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, if I search for you, I see there's pages about you on Snopes and on PolitiFact, where they're checking you all the time, right?
All the time.
I'll just ask a kind of obnoxious journalist question. Do you have an obligation to the truth?
Absolutely, and we try to stick to it as much as possible. Unfortunately, we don't have a huge fact-checking bureau like many of the people in print journalism do. And a lot of times we're passing along information that we have found and that we assume to be correct because it's printed on other stuff and on other websites. And then who gets PolitiFacted? Not the original source of the information, but the group that made the graphic with it. And, I think when we were first starting out, we were perhaps a bit more careless because we wanted to get our point of view out there. If you notice, we haven't been PolitiFacted in quite a while. So as we took on employees and now we have, now we actually do have a couple of in-house fact checkers. We've become more of a traditional journalism outfit.
So you do have an obligation to your credibility.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, your credibility is everything, and once you lose it, you lose it. And out of that ecosystem of liberal blogs out there, I think that we're some of the most well-regarded. We're one of the most well-regarded ones in terms of our fastidiousness about sourcing things and being as accurate as possible.
Interesting.
What kinds of things do you think our students in social journalism could be learning? We're going to have you on Skype to class too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But could be learning from an Occupy Democrats.
Well, I mean, I think they could be learning just more about what people respond to in terms of what they're most interested in sharing and engaging with, and I think it's often tied with emotions. I don't know what you think gets the most response, whether it's kind of just humor or something enjoyable, or whether it's something people are really outraged by. But I think those are the kinds of things that students really need to think about. And also that what you were talking about in terms of simplicity, I think way too often we just don't think about, how people consume information and how to make it easy for them to do that. And that is just so important. That may be like everything in terms of whether people pay attention to you or not. So students need to think more about that for sure.
So what would you want to tell our students, Raphael?
Yeah.
I would tell them to fearlessly engage with social media and go into those newsrooms and say, this is how young people are engaging with politics nowadays. Encourage newsrooms to change, to be more responsive to the new mediums that especially young people are using to engage with politics, and really be agents of change, because people are not just looking at Meet the Press and the Washington Post. They're looking at they're looking at this whole cornucopia of news sources out there, many of them non-traditional, and we need them there because there's a happy medium, there's a happy marriage there between traditional journalism and what we do, and in fact we need each other. We both need each other.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine a different relationship with a media player if the Washington Post came to you and said, okay, we like what you're doing, but we really wish you'd link to our stories so we can get some business benefit? Would you consider doing things like that?
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
Okay.
Why not? Absolutely.
No skin off your nose.
No skin off our nose. Every newspaper. It's kind of like the Wild West. How journalism in the United States really started in very informal ways, and slowly but surely it evolved into more what we now see as like traditional journalism. And in some ways, maybe Occupy Democrats might evolve in some future iteration into something more traditional. It's a coming merger, perhaps, of social media journalism and traditional journalism.
Yeah, and I even see that if you sent traffic, again, it's the old model of sending traffic to a destination, which is exactly what I'm trying to break people out of. But if you sent traffic to the Washington Post, they'd see it in their referrals, and they'd say, oh, who are these guys? One more question from me. Your relationship with the political campaigns. Obviously, you have none with Trump. You had some affinity with Bernie. You want to mention your and your brother's political affiliations during the primaries?
Yes, that's right. Well, it's funny. Much like the Democratic Party, we were split. I'm with her, and he was feeling the burn. So it led to some interesting discussions, and in the editing floor. But in the end, it was important. It was actually great for our page because we maintained a certain sense of objectivity. We kept both Bernie and Hillary supporters, not happy with us, but on board, so that when in the end Hillary did win the nomination, we did lose, I would say, about 15,000 followers when we even just mentioned that Hillary won, which was seen as a capitulation. Yeah, but during those few days, we still gained followers. So it was just a blip. As far as the political campaigns, we are working with certain super PACs now to just promote their content and help them in a kind of like a consulting kind of way. They're coming to us and they're seeing our success and they're interested in what we do. So maybe like recently a super PAC made a Hillary video and they sent it to us first for our opinion, and it's stuff like that that leads me to think that campaigns are starting to realize that it's not just them sending out their content on social media, but they need to listen to the people that have been successful on social media and hire the people that have some experience in it, and not just, they need to be reactive and just put out their content in the hopes that what I used to work for television or print media will work on social media.
Have you had any official contact with DNC or Hillary's campaign or Bernie's campaign before that?
Nothing official, but through certain back channels, yes, absolutely. But we would share their content anyway, but they just wanted to make sure that we were on board.
You have any other questions?
I don't think so.
No. Raphael, thank you so much. So to mention too, if you want to follow Occupy Democrats, couldn't be simpler. Search on Facebook for Occupy Democrats, and there they are. I'm betting if you are at all left-leaning, you're seeing the memes come through anyway. And also, if you're right-leaning, we'll talk about that for a second. The argument that I hear all the time, I'm sure you do too, that Facebook is an echo chamber, the internet is an echo chamber. People only see things that confirm their own opinions. Do you buy that argument? Do you argue against that? What's your experience in Occupy Democrats of how many people who are sympathetic to your view versus people who are antagonistic to your view?
Well, we are the conservatives' number one hate page. They troll us like you have no idea. They have a special place in their heart of hatred for us. There's a million parody pages or pages that are dedicated entirely just to take us down. Some of them with more than 100,000 followers. So we show up on their newsfeed a lot. I don't think that the opposite is necessarily true. In fact, I think that Facebook and social media is very friendly turf for progressive and liberal media. We get put on their newsfeeds a lot because social media, it trends young, and really most of the viral content on it is liberal. So we ended up on their newsfeeds. But I never see conservative content on my own personal newsfeed. And I think that Mark Zuckerberg wants it that way. They don't want to upset people. They don't want you to log on to Facebook and have your views contradicted. So it really does create an echo chamber that I think is actually harmful. It would be better if somehow we could see more conservative content on our page, because I have seen some conservative pages that do fairly well, not necessarily viral. And I wonder to myself, how come I've never seen this content?
Right. Is there anybody, if I were going to follow somebody on the right so that I could get a sense of what they're saying, is there any particular page you would follow?
Yeah, there's a page called Rightwing News, and there's another page called For America, and they're very large. I mean, to be honest, I think their content, it borders on the disturbing. And right-wing memes, left-wing memes can be a little abrasive, but you really see some really nasty content floating around on the right that is really quite shocking. Like Hillary Clinton with bloody hands. She's like, I killed 4 people in Benghazi. And it's got 500,000 shares, 1 million shares. And I mean, this is kind of my bias showing, but I think the right-wing meme game can really be stepped up and try to be, I mean, it's just pure alarmism, pure yellow journalism. There's not even an attempt to be objective, and I think that's kind of harming them.
Can you imagine putting out a series of memes that could be convincing to, because you're speaking to you're preaching, you're memeing to the choir, pretty much, right? That's why we share stuff. Could you imagine rethinking what you make to the extent, or some part of what you make to the extent that it could talk to center-right people to bring them over?
Oh, I think about that all the time. In fact, I think about that in a strategic way all the time. I try to include conservative framing in my graphics as much as possible, because we already have the left. But, I try to couch things in terms of freedom and liberty and choice all the time, because that appeals to conservatives. And I think that's what drives many conservatives crazy, because we are being effective on our page. I'll give you one quick example. We do a lot of pro-choice and, in fact, unabashed pro-abortion graphics, because we feel like there's not enough people out there that are being really affirmative in their support for these policies. And I always say, I support a man and a woman's right to make their own choices and to be free to plan their families as they see fit. And boy, does that drive them crazy, because it is effective, and it's borrowing their terms that they have claimed a monopoly on for so long and turning the tables on it. So We do that.
Well, I proved that I lied. I promised you a last question about 3 questions ago. Raphael, thank you so much. I really, there's a lot for us to learn, I think, from your methodology and what you see. And as you get more data and graphics, there'll be more things, data about what works in graphics. That'll be valuable to us too. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Right on.
Appreciate
Cheers.
it. Cheers.
What'd you think?
Fascinating. I mean, I agree with you. I think there's just so much we can learn in journalism from, the kinds of things that they're doing. So it was great.
So I think that's it for dotNYC. We've done another one. I have no idea what we're doing next. Watch Facebook. That scares Annie Berman, our producer, to death. I had an idea this morning, though. I had a good idea this morning. Well, one thing at the end of the piece I wrote about memes, I was talking to a journalist about what they do at Occupy Democrats. And I speculated about whether the Washington Post should have a meme desk, right? And should they take the stories and take the columns and take what they have and put them out there and whether it would work. And so then we started talking about the kind of the death of the homepage and the front page as our vehicle of news judgment. And I said, the only exception I see to that right now is what Jim Rich, the editor of the New York Daily News, has been doing with the front page of the Daily News. And this journalist said, yeah, because that's a meme.
Yeah.
When Rich makes a page 1 about Donald Trump, and he has one today about the whole Second Amendment thing, people pass it around like crazy. So there is a skill to meme making, I think.
There is, yeah. And a lot of it is just not being rigid about how you do your work. I think that alone would solve a lot of our problems if we were just a little more open-minded.
So Carrie, I get to see Carrie all the time. I'm lucky.
Right.
But thank you for coming in for dotNYC.
No, thanks
Thank
for
you,
having
folks, on big old cameras. Thank you, folks, on Mevo and Facebook Live. And we'll be back sometime next week. Just watch my Facebook feed. Look for dotNYC show on both Twitter and Facebook, and you'll see what we're going to do next week. And that's it. Thank you very much. Bye.